Well, it's always a delight to come across a cordial atheist that doesn't seek to strawman or engage in a um, not even a debate, just an argument to win by any means, with no exchange of knowledge or dialogue. And talk to me about life is a breath of fresh air. And there's been a couple atheists that I've come in contact with that have um, have been as cordial as him, and I really do appreciate these people, um, because I think they get exposed to, or most people get exposed to, um, the loudest voices in the Anglophone world, which are these very loud Protestants. And we're a Bible-based church, which makes no sense to me. A Bible-based church. What? This was compiled over centuries. Um, so I'm going through his questions again. Apparently, I didn't clarify one particularly, so let's get right into it. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to do the whole video responding to my post. Not a problem. I believe in the exchange of ideas, and the bitter fighting back and forth in comments I don't see as productive at all. Um, if we're going to make any change in the world for the better, whether it's religious wise or secular wise, people need to be able to speak to each other honestly and openly, and with Antifa on one side and the alt-right on the other. I have no time for either of those people, or either of those groups, I mean. Number three, I'm not sure whether or not you addressed that, what I put here. Has God's direction about morality changed? If so, for what reason might God change his mind about what is moral? No. I mean, in my older videos, you could hear me say that there is no morality in the Bible, but I don't agree with that anymore. I actually, um, you'll notice that I ascribe to documentary hypothesis, which is the multiple writer stories. You have the first account of creation written by the priestly text, and then you have the second account by the Yah's text, and then you have the intersplicing with Noah's flood of P and J, and the intersplicing goes on all throughout the Noah story, and you have the redactor, and by the time you get to Abraham, and especially in Exodus, you have redactor, J, P, E, and then and that's all throughout. And then with Deuteronomy, you get D, the Deuteronomist. But no, the Ten Commandments, as I explained before, they get applied differently, right? And just like um, if a child curses his father, he shall be stoned to death. Um, shall be, should be. That's never taken place. Nobody's ever stoned a child to death for cursing their father or disobeying them. Even the most ultra-Orthodox Jews, who are like Taliban in their, I mean, they're hardcore. Yeah, this never happened. There's a lot of shoulds, but if you look at the Ten Commandments, there's no punishments attached to breaking them. There's no punishments. There's a great piece of early church writing that talks about how, and it goes into this, that just like, as I say before, the Ten Commandments, right? Moses was given the Ten Commandments, and he had to extrapolate the laws that the people were going to live by. And a lot of those laws were only set up for the time in the desert, right? For the traveling time. But of course, there's also a lot of the ceremonial stuff, like the ark and the lampstands and the tabernacles. And then the generation after him, you had other Levitical priests and Kohanim come in and add laws, and it's still part of the Torah today, and we can see where it is. But those 10 symbols, you know, yeah, that's the I mean, murder is always wrong. Now, we live in a day and age where people will conflate murder with killing. Everybody knows the difference between murder and killing. Bearing false witness against your neighbor, adultery, these things don't change. So, no. What evidence is there the woman caught in adultery is original to Luke? I'm aware of one collection of the F group texts featured in the Gospel, which seems sketchy, argument being originally to Luke, given their late text. What it does seem to suggest, along with the movement of various places in John, in some manuscripts, is that there were long doubts about where it should actually go. The term strongly suggests that it was not a part of early manuscripts of John, and indeed that some doubted it had anything to do with John, the author. So it's plausible that the Johannine simply wasn't in the autograph or similar, but also equally plausible it may have been a later addendum by the Johannine community, or it may even be a section written by someone or some other community entirely that sounded Johannine to some people. So if there are any questions about the authorship of the text, it is reasonable to adjust the level of trust we put in the text accordingly. Is it reasonable? Oh, it is reasonable. Well, shoot, I wish I had. Oh, I do. This is actually, if you can get a hold of this one, it's the NASB Study Bible. This is a very great text because it has all the archaeology, and it'll show you variants from Samaritan Pentateuch, and it'll have some of the words translated. The woman caught in adultery. People, it's kind of like Q, where Matthew and Mark, or Matthew and Luke were looking at Mark as a template, and they also had this other source. Its source in German is Quelle, so it's just Q. We call it Q. And the woman caught in adultery was a known story, right? But they didn't know where to put it. It was widely known, and we know this took place. Where does it go? But you know what? I'll have to find the papyrus where it actually goes into it. Yeah, John is a real strange. Look, I think it's even in brackets in John, because John actually ends with, therefore, many other signs Jesus also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book, but which have been written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and believing in him you may have life in his name. Yeah, they always allude to other stories. Let me see if I can catch the Percopia adulterae in here. Sorry for wasting your time. This Where is the pericope adultery? Us Orthodox aren't good with the number system. Again, it was created by the Germans in the High Middle Ages. Oh, the adulterous woman, right? Um, where is it gone? The story may not have originally belonged to the Gospel of John. It is absent from most of the early manuscripts, and those who have it sometimes place it elsewhere, e.g., after Luke 21:38. But the story may well be authentic. This verse, along with 8:1, shows the story of the originally attached to another narrative, since Jesus is not presenting at the meeting of the Sanhedrin described in VV 45 to 52. So I'll put that in the description, where it shows up in Luke. I believe that's too long. Didn't read. Is it reasonable to have such a high level of certainty about the earliest stages of these texts, when even later stages there are clear evidence of editorial movement, uncertainty, particularly about the pericopes, given the texts become more canonized the longer they exist? Are they read and known? Well, you have the Kami-Yohannian, which that was people try to say, oh, that was put in there to establish Trinity. No, it wasn't. But like I said, the this is pretty much the original, the NASB. It's, over 6,000 Greek manuscripts, and the reason why the King James onlyists hate this, and I have a King James. This is the first Bible I ever got because it was free. And they only used 6 manuscripts, and they got a lot of weird crap in here, and they actually invented, basically guessed at a partial verse in the Apocalypse of John. This relied on about 6, whereas the NASB, and those were Greek manuscripts, and some of them were Latin manuscripts reworked back into Greek, whereas a modern critical translation relies on all of the Greek, the over 6,000 Greek manuscripts. I think it's something like 7,000 or 8,000 now. The Latin, the Syriac, the Coptic, the Ethiopic, even some of the High German, Slavonic. So it's the most attested to work. The New Testament, as a library, the books are the most attested to and have the least variance than any other books. And we're talking about from event to quill to papyrus. We're talking only decades, right? I mean, shorter period than from now to the Vietnam War. And of course, we have people like Papias telling us, yeah, Mark, he got most of his information from Peter, and it looks that way. I suppose my question is really, what do we know about the formation of these texts in the lifetimes of the writers. So if we take it at the synoptics were all completed by 110 at the latest, what level of certainty do we have the state of these texts at that period? What would later considered resemble a level of certainty? It seems to we have a window of time that matters the most. Well, I don't put in actually I'm gonna have to put this in two parts because I'm getting like I put the wrong. This will be part one. Sorry. I'll do part two right now.